West Tigers podcast, episode number 406. Joined by Gary and Jordan tonight. You've been a regular, when I say regular, Jordan, you've been a regular guest the past couple of years. So thank you for stepping up and taking the ball and running it forward tonight. We're a bit like the West Tigers. We're sort of running it low on troops, few injuries and excuses for some of the boys. So thank you for coming on.
No worries, mate. Happy to be here. I'm happy to jump up from New South Wales Cup or Ron Massey Cup, wherever I get pulled from, and
Yeah. I
do
was
my.
going to ask you, you're one of Richo's clients because that seems to be a way into the first grade side. Are you with Richo Sports or whatever it's called?
I've got an NDA on that. I can't really talk about it.
Okay, fair enough. So midweek pod, we're going to talk obviously the game against Penrith on Sunday afternoon. Yachty's quiz. There'll be a little bit of buy, sell, hold. But before that, I've asked the boys because Gary, I am seen as Mr. Negative. I've
Who
decided
by? Who
the
would ever
first
say that?
15 minutes, the first 15 minutes tonight are going to be all positive. So for the people that don't like positives, you can log back on and listen after the 15-minute mark where it might change tack. But I've asked the boys, what are the three biggest positives since this time last year as a club? So you could just give me one at a time, boys, and if we repeat each other, we can skip over them. But Jordan, I'll start with you. What's one of your biggest three?
That we have more wins than probably the entirety of last season. I think that's a big positive. We've definitely looked more competitive. Yeah, there's been a couple of games we looked a bit off, but um, I only got to watch the Cowboys game yesterday through replay, and I was monitoring the score. It was at a family event, but I think the second half played really well. I thought there were some really positive aspects to that game. But yeah, I'd say the more wins and that we've been a lot more competitive is probably a biggest positive.
Gary, one of yours?
Um, I'm going to go for the new players that we have brought into the club. A couple of them have had a couple of poor weeks, but guys like Taruva, Terrell May, Skelton, when he's managed to get on the field and he's back this weekend, I think they've been massive contributors to us. I think there's more change needed, but the new players that have come into the club over the past 12 months have has started to make a big difference.
Just to tack on to Jordan's point, that was one of mine. It's undeniably a more competitive team. It's gone from 2 wins at this point last year from 12 games to five, and even of those 7 losses, I'd argue there's 5 of them we could have won. The Newcastle game round one, we led 8-0 at halftime, lost by two. The Warriors game, we led with 5 minutes to go and got beat by two. Parramatta game, we did lose by 16, but I think we were on the attack with 5 minutes to go, down by four, with all the momentum in that game. South game, we dropped the ball over the line, which would have won us the game. And the Cowboys game, obviously, we won 28-6 with 13 on 13, but it means nothing, Jordan, if unfortunately we had 2 men in the sin bin. Um, any other positives you've got from 12 months ago?
Well, probably actually the lack of sin bins we've had. I think those two sin bins on the weekend were unfortunate, but compared to last season as well, I think the minimal amount of sin bins we've had in comparisons are positive. We should be probably experts playing with 12 players on the field, but yeah, the sin bins and some disciplines picked up. There are a couple of players that still really need to fix up their discipline and sort out a few issues there, just giving away silly penalties or restarts at the wrong time. But I think discipline and the sin binning fiasco from last season has definitely subsided for this year.
One of mine, Gary, was probably along your lines. It was the big signings actually playing good football at the club. We've probably only had Appy in the past who could be in that category, and I think we've got 3 guys this year, especially Terrell May and Taruva. I think they've been 9 out of 10s, and Luai's probably been a 7. I think for what he's brought, more so probably off the field than on the field at this present stage, but very early days in his tenure. What else have you got for me on the positive side?
Yeah, it's really going to tie into that off-field aspect you're talking about, and I think the culture at the club, while still a work in progress, I think is much improved from what we've seen before. The fight in the team that's come from that is much better than what we've seen before, outside of that Melbourne Storm game that was just diabolical. Even last weekend, they didn't give up. They fought back into that game last week. I know the Cowboys took their foot off the pace a little bit, took their foot off the pedal, and that's when we stormed back into the game. But there's fight in this team, and I do believe that there's an improvement in standards across the club starting to build as well. And that's through that leadership and those new players coming into the side. So I think there's been an improvement in our culture. It's still a way to go, but that is on the improve for me.
Any others for you, Jordan, either on field or off field? Positives?
I think apart from obviously the Galvin saga, I think the lack of stuff coming out of the club, the rumors, the talk, the media beat up. The Galvin situation was more probably external and management, but and his manager. But I think the it has been a lot less drama filled. We're not really in the headlines every other week, and there's not a lot coming out of the club. Although it would be nice to actually hear about or see some of these signings that we were kind of teased with a few, well, over a month ago now by Richo on one of the pods. So it'd be actually nice to see some of those signings because we need troops, and we even need troops for this year because we're scraping the bottom of the barrel for the forward stocks at the moment.
That was sort of my final big positive, Gary. I know it's been a bit of a sort of slow burn with churning through, I guess, the upper management of the club, but do you feel like it's heading in the right direction, even if you put aside, recent losses?
Yeah, that for me is my third one. It's the off field. I think the club is in a better position now than it was 12 months ago, and a lot of that's on field, a lot of that's off field. I think Richo's starting to have an effect throughout the club. I don't think Richo's had the best past month, but I think the club is still on that upward kind of direction, and hopefully that continues over the rest of the season.
Obviously, with the new independent board, and Richo's been there now for over 12 months, probably 18 months he's been there. Jordan, do you still maintain the same sort of faith you have in him, or does he need a little bit more help inside that building?
I still maintain the faith. I believe he is probably the best operator and the operator we need. He's definitely putting the club in the right direction. Commercially, he's trying to build the football team. Um, he's plugged a lot of leaks. He's probably got a lot of weight to throw around in that thing. I think he just doesn't understand part of, especially with Tigers fans and always wanting positive news, maybe just be a bit more tight-lipped in relation to signings or if there's going to be announcements or don't put a time frame on it because everyone sat there on tenterhooks for 2, 3 weeks and we're still waiting.
Yeah, everyone set their calendar alerts for 3 weeks' time
Well,
and
I
just
had
100%.
those hours and minutes and days. I think it's been 43 days, Gary, since he went on that podcast. But you said that was probably one of his only big mistakes he's made, you reckon?
I think I needs to be more aware of Jordan said of the scar tissue that this fan base has, and they the fan base, and myself included, is hanging out for positive news
Just
constantly around
just
this
for
club.
context, he did say it was on James Graham's podcast. It was 2 days after the Parramatta game, which is basically 6 weeks ago, about 42, 43 days ago. He did say, and I'm paraphrasing, there'll be two or three new signings in the next few weeks. So who knows? I don't think he was referring to the women's team or state cup
No,
contracts,
definitely not.
Harry. But do you think one or two of them might have fallen through or haven't come to fruition, or do you still think that's cooking? I suppose I don't know.
I think there's lots going on in the background. I'm guessing at the moment we're kind of like the duck with its feet underwater, looks all calm on top, but I'm sure there's a lot going on in the background, and I'm sure I think that the Pierce Paul rumor has been around for a while now, and I would have to think that one is probably fairly close to being done. So um, I'm sure there's a couple of others that the club is talking to, and hopefully they come through as well. And over the next couple of weeks, we get those announcements of some players. Hopefully, a couple for this year, but definitely some for next year. I think it's really important.
Just last one on Richo for now, Jordan. Do you think, if he's to be here, hopefully for another 3 or 4 years, that he should be on in the role of sort of looking after memberships and stadiums, or do you think this combination of him and Benji, without a recruitment officer or without a general manager of football, I know Matt Betsy's in that sort of interim role. Do you think that's enough inside the club, or do you think they need a general manager of football or another football head in there to keep the momentum going?
I guess it depends on the dynamic. Like some clubs, you want a CEO to focus on the commercial side, the membership side, and everything, and you want that football manager for recruitment. But I guess at the same time, we had that before, and it's more of a case of is it too many cooks? You got too many people. We tried to bring in Scott Fulton, and that just ended up being an absolute disaster. So it's more of a case of is it simpler just to have Richo and Benji doing it, and is it working? Yeah, I'd give it a pass mark for the moment, but I don't think there would be any real rush to bring in a general manager of football if it's not needed.
For me, I have a look at the track record of bringing players across so far, and the majority of Richo signings have been an improvement on what we had before. So we got rid of Nofaluma at the start of last year, and we signed Taruva for this year. We lost Stefano, and we ended up with May. All those are improvements. We've also picked up Jarrell Skelton as a winger as well. So I think everywhere where we've kind of missed out, I think it's been an improvement after. Now, it's a very tough to improve on the loss of Lockie Galvin, but so far, I think what we've had going out has been replaced by better coming in. So I'm quite happy with how that's going at the moment. So I think he's doing a really good job of that recruitment process for the club.
I actually got this idea about being sort of starting on a positive note by reading the West Tigers forum, and I'm just going to reference a specific post. It's around sort of our local juniors, Jordan, because there's been obviously a little bit of blowback since we've lost Galvin and obviously lost one or two last year. But it was a post by the name of actually West Tigers, so not a very creative name, but it was a good post. He said about retention, let's not rewrite the story um, in terms of the narrative around that we can't hold on to our juniors. He said we've retained, just off the top of my head, Buller, Macassini, Mason, the Laulili brothers, Pole, and then there's a couple of state cup or younger guys that I'm not sure. I can't read my own writing here, so I won't read them out. He said we've lost Lockie Galvin, but we've also picked up from other juniors. We've picked up the Fainu brothers, Taruva, Stafford Toa, who was a Newcastle junior. He says let's just focus on making the right decisions going forward, not ones driven by outside noise or hypothetical future predictions. Your reaction to that?
Yeah, and look, we've also kept a few guys like Phoenix Godinez and
That
Tapau
was one he was
Mords.
one he wrote down. Sorry, I just couldn't read my writing.
Yeah, and there's some good young forwards. Like we've retained a few. We've got that young hooker Hayward as well. There's we're definitely moving some ranks around in the juniors that we're able to hold on to them. And Godinez's even a Moses client, so we were able to hold on to him. Even though there was serious interest from Union and whatnot. And Macassini was actually probably the biggest one that we needed to hold on to. I still expect him to probably make his NRL debut sometime this year once he turns 18. But we are we are retaining juniors. The Galvin one, I think unfortunately, no matter what, if maybe if there was different circumstances with manager or his parents, I think there was probably a absolute Buckley's chance that we held on to him just with all the other circumstances going around in the back. If the money they're talking about that he sacrificed is true, what chance did we really have?
Yeah, I tend to agree with the Galvin one. I don't want to get stuck on him tonight, Gary. But do you have any thoughts about local juniors? Do we still have a problem in terms of retaining our best, or is it sort of the Galvin was a one-off case?
Look, at this point, it's a little bit of a one-off case. We'll see what happens over the next couple of months. We've got Talon De Silva, who's also off contract at the end of next year. So it will be interesting to see what happens in that regard. Uh, I think what we're fairly good at the moment is keeping those guys who are in the pathway system still. We don't tend to lose that many from the pathway system. We lost Large earlier in the year who went over to Manly, but for the most part, we're good at keeping them at that level. Um, uh, those players that are making the NRL side now from our juniors, it's really only that first wave of guys who are coming through now. So it's still to be seen how well we keep them once they make it to the NRL level.
All right, Jordan, I wasn't. The boys were on Sunday night and they went through their one words. I wasn't on, so I've got my word. It's actually two words. But did you have a word to describe that performance against the Cowboys?
Um, Probably, if anything, it would have been sporadic. Like with the events of the game and everything that happened, we and like you watch the footage of Luai spraying Bird and them trying to get on top of it. It was sporadic, but we still managed to score points. So I think if we can sort of kind of hone in on that and calm it down a little bit, we'll be a lot better and a lot structured. I liked what I saw of Mason, and I think he can straighten us up a bit. But yeah, I just think we looked a bit sporadic with what we tried to do, and it sort of kind of undid us in certain points.
We'll get to the game preview, Gary, later in regards to team changes, but I thought that was a huge positive to come out of the game. Heath Mason, he was dynamite.
Yeah, very elusive, very good footwork. I'm I want to see what his passing game is like. He didn't really do much passing in that game, and we haven't seen a lot of it when he was at fullback either. I thought when he played fullback earlier in the season, he struggled to create the shape and make the players outside him better. So that's probably the biggest challenge for him at the moment is how well that passing game he's able to implement. Because if you're playing 5'8", you need to have a passing game. But his running game looked excellent on the weekend. And what really impressed me about his game on the weekend wasn't with the ball. I was really worried about him being a target in defence, but I thought he really held his position defensively really strongly. Probably better than what Galvin has so far in his career. So it was a very good defensive effort from Mason on the weekend.
Difficult one for me to line up, Jordan, because we often go on this podcast about glass half full and glass half empty. And I mean, you look at that game, and I just feel like it was so winnable. Like if we were to play them again next week in North Queensland, I'd be really confident. But I don't know if that makes me more angry or or because I just feel like Steve, particularly on our pod, he hammered us, and I think that's fair. Is that no point blaming referees? You know who's going to be referee when you haven't been a strong club for 10 years. You're probably going to get the bad end of the decisions, and I thought whilst they were soft in innings, I just thought, especially the first 20 minutes, was really disappointing coming off a bye, and it's something that we've really struggled with this year is those starts to games.
Yeah, definitely, and I don't think it makes you mad, Eddie. I think it makes you a West Tigers fan. It's yeah, if it's not the start of games, it's that 10-minute period after half time, or it's it's that 10-minute period on either side of the break. We've got to like it's very, very hard to think of a time that we actually played an 80-minute game, that we played a game that we really put structure, everything, put a team to the sword that wasn't injury riddled, or we haven't put an 80-minute performance against a top tier team. The closest one was possibly the Sharks game, but even then that got too close for comfort. But we've got to find that ability to start a game strong and maintain it. We have to be able to maintain that momentum and that strength and not fall apart the moment of decision or a sin binning or something that goes against us and we just seem to go weak at the knees.
Interesting point I thought Steve made, Gary, that I was nodding my head on when I was listening on Monday is that our wins tend to be ones that are a little bit frantic. I still don't feel in some of our wins outside of the first Parramatta game and Newcastle game that we control games in terms of the collision and in terms of game plan and just playing the long game. It seems like I think Steve used the quote, yeah, our heart rates are at 180 at the end of the game, which is spot on in terms of that Sharks and that Dragons win. Um, do you feel like that is potentially something that's going to hold us back in terms of the style of football that we're playing? Is it a coaching thing or is it a roster thing?
I think it's a roster thing. Uh, I think I answered Steve on this the other night by saying we're going to be frantic when you're worried as a team that you got guys in the side that you don't trust to hang on the ball or not make a stupid mistake. Like it's really hard to build pressure when you don't hold on to the ball for long enough. And what that then leads to is it leads to guys probably trying to do a little bit too much, a little bit too early. And that just compounds the issue. And I think that's why we kind of look frantic and a little bit all over the shop. Is I still think, despite I think the morale and the guys are playing for each other, I still think there's guys who probably feel they have to do too much, because they can't rely on a few weaknesses in the team.
Jordan, what are your expectations for the rest of the season? I mean, a lot of hope that first 6 weeks, and we're sort of at least on the ladder. We're still in that top eight race. Are you looking up, or are you like me and you're starting to get worried and look down?
I'm starting to get worried about our forward pack. I'm starting to get worried about how thin we're looking. We really need some signings, and they can't just be depth signings. We need some mid-range signings. We need some guys that are actually going who aren't at the club, at other clubs, are struggling to make first grade, but are actually going to, you know, put pressure on those first graders to make the spot their own. Where my expectations for the rest of the season, I have, and I'm not going to make a prediction just so Gary can, give me crap about it for
I
a
wouldn't do that.
year on year on year. Never. Um, but I have a feeling that we will go for a run. I have a feeling that there will be some part in the season
What,
that
three
we
in a
will.
row?
That'll follow me forever. And if we don't win three in a row, which obviously means we'll never win the finals or a grand final because you have to win three at least. Um, yeah, if we never win three in a row, I'll make sure that three in a row statement is on my tombstone.
We've been close a few times. I think we've won two in a row about 3 times since you said it. So I don't
Yeah,
know if
well, I
you jinxed
technically
it or
still
whether
count the
you've actually
bye.
been a good prediction, just unlucky.
Yeah, well, I still maintain that the bye counted at the end of
Yeah.
last year, but Gary's pretty stoic on that.
Yeah. Well, Gary, to flip to negative, Eddie, my one word was spoon watch because I do fear. I look at the analytics. I won't call it Eddie's gambling, but it's sort of Eddie's gambling at the moment. I look at the draw we had for the start of the year. We've played 12 games. We've played the team running 15th twice. We've played the team running 16th twice. We've played the Cowboys, who won't make the eight. We've played South, who I don't think will make the eight. We've played the Dolphins, who I don't think will make the eight. We haven't played. We've played two teams or two games against teams in the top four. And I'll look at the next 7 or 8 weeks, and I'll go through it quickly. Penrith, who are 14th, so it can be deceptive, but defending premiers that need to win. Raiders, who are second. At Brookvale, Manly, who are seventh. At Roosters, who are actually 12th, but Buckley's chance of winning there. At Warriors, Titans at home. Please win that. Penrith again, and then the Bulldogs. That is the next 8 games. That, to me, is a bit of a gauntlet, the way we're trending.
Yeah, it's definitely uh, a tough period in our season. Um, as I've said to you many times in the past week that you haven't liked, we have to be better. Um, we need to play much better than we played last weekend. We need to play much better than we played the weekend before. The really important thing in the NRL is you can't afford to go on those losing streaks. That's where your season turns poor. That's when you come into contention for the wooden spoon. And it's really important to break a losing streak early. I think this weekend's game is really crucial. If we don't put in a good performance this weekend, then I can definitely see the season really taking a downward turn.
You mentioned the roster before, Jordan. Is there any signing that could happen in the next couple of weeks? So it looks like that Kai Pearce Paul one is probably one for next season, but are you okay with potentially waiting until next year if there's a couple of good ones, or do you think that no, we can't just afford to throw another season away. And the fact we've lost Galvin for nothing at the moment means we need immediate reinforcements before June 30.
We do. We need immediate reinforcements before June 30. We need at least two players who are on the edge of other teams that are going to improve us. Now, whether that is a 6 month deal or an 18-month deal, like I know we can't do it at the expense of next year. We want to make sure we build the roster even better than we can for next year. But we need to be looking at two players at least that are going to come in and put pressure on, or even come into the team immediately and make an impact, because especially now with Twal with concussion, and that's a concern in its own right. You know, Seafarth has been moved around. We need we need a second rower at least. Like I know Pierce Paul will be next year, and he'll probably be starting second row next year. But we need another outside back, and we need another a forward or a middle that is going to help out. Because I look at the bench and I look at our second row. Like Suka has impressed me in parts of his game, but I keep looking at that bench and I just think to myself, how is that an NRL bench?
Look, it's a really tough one for me, Jordan. I like 6 month contracts don't really happen in the NRL. I don't think you're going to pick up someone for 6 months. And the issue you do have is exactly what you spoke about, is whether you sell, like you have to sell a position to someone to get them to come across for multiple years. And the effect that has on your ability to build the squad for next season and 2026. It's a really fine line to walk, and I'm glad I don't have to make that decision because we definitely need upgrades for this year. But how to do that while setting yourself up to be in a really good position for the next 1, 2, 3 years is the really hard part about it. And hopefully Richo gets that right. Hopefully, someone like that Kai Pearce Paul signing can turn into a position that's for this year instead of next year, because that's a signing that I think improves us next year, but would make a massive difference to us this year and could make a big difference on that edge for this season.
I want to talk about the coach, Jordan, for a minute because it will be interesting to see what happens. Like, I was quite not taken aback, but I listened to the start of our podcast on Sunday, and the boys were spent about 10 minutes at the start talking about the worry about potentially what is in store for Benji over the next couple of months. Um, is there a baseline that he has to achieve this year where you'd be comfortable saying he's under no pressure, or do you think he is under pressure heading into the second half of the year?
He's always going to be under pressure. Personally, I think from what we've seen through the team and how we've played and the improvement and the fight, and call me nuts, but for me, it's a pass mark at the moment. I think there is enough there to show that with another 12 months under his belt, another preseason, and a couple of extra recruits, he has the ability to turn this team into exactly what we want it to be. So, yes, he'll be under pressure if we go on a 6, 7 game losing streak, and hopefully that's not the case. The media pressure will get louder, but I think at the moment, if we jag half the amount of wins or 3 wins over the next 7 weeks, I think it'll still be enough just to sort of kind of hold the dogs back before people start questioning whether he should be coach in 2026.
I like that one. Hold the dogs back. I haven't heard that one before. I like it. Gary, I actually have like I just think he's got to avoid the spoon. And it might sound stupid because people will go, well, what's the difference between finishing 15th and finishing last? But I just don't know if the club can maintain uh, the ambush that they receive if they came last again, remembering that he was the quasi sort of coach in 2023, even though he wasn't officially the coach. He was the coach in 2024, and we've upgraded, and with upgrades comes increased expectations for 2025. But I just think he's got to get a few wins, get by this season. I actually have low hopes, not even low hopes, but a low bar. I don't think he's got to get close to the eight. He's just got to continue to improve the side in terms of their competitiveness. If he can replicate the first half of the season in the second half, which I have big doubts about, I think it'd be a big tick for him. But where do you sit in terms of like either the number of wins or position he's got to get, or is it basically looking at every game and how competitive and if the side's improving?
Look, for me, it's not just about where we finish this season. If we end up with the wooden spoon, I think he's in a lot of trouble. But if we avoid that wooden spoon, plus he's able to get out into the market and bring in two, three more quality players for next year, then that buys him more time. So I think it's not just what we do on the field that's important. It's what we do with the squad between now and the end of the season as well. If we're looking at going in to next season with a far superior side, then I think there's a lot of credit of that has to go to Marshall. If you listen to all the players that have come across our club since he's been the coach, they all talk about coming across because it's Benji Marshall they're playing under, and and if he can bring in another two, three, four, 17 players between, like that makes a big difference, and I think that buys him more time.
So just to clarify, Gary, you're like me. If you think he can win eight or nine games, let's see if they finish 8 or 9 games and they finish 14th, 15th, or 16th, that's enough.
My big thing is I want to see progress. I want to see progress of the squad, and I want to see progress of the team. Now, if we win uh, that 8 or 9 games, but we're playing really poor football, then I think there's still going to be questions asked. But if we can, for me, it's about getting as far away from that wooden spoon as you can, and getting some players in. But yeah, if he's anything above kind of that bottom quarter, I think he's definitely safe.
I just think I don't want to say the club's trapped, Jordan, but I just don't see how we could replace him at the moment because I just think Luai particularly is tied to Benji. Taruva, I think, is tied to Benji. Um, and by starting again and firing a club legend, even if they were to come bottom two or three, I think you just start the whole process again, don't you?
Yeah, I agree. And look, we're not held at gunpoint in relation to the relations he does have with the players. I understand, and it is hard because you've got that clause in Luai's contract. But as Gary mentioned, the amount of players that say they are playing for him and the way he looks after them and what he's bringing out of them, and you're seeing improvement in players from last year, and you're seeing improvement from players that were already at the club. So they're past marks as far as I'm concerned. There's a lot to actually look in the scale of it. But you're right, unless there was an amazing replacement that you could do, and I agree with the wooden spoon. If we got that, that would make it very hard. But there is enough there even now for me to go, okay, I would give him another 18 months. Then if we're not competitive, like proper competitive, that's when we probably have to start going, okay, this isn't working how we want it to work. So I think he needs more time.
Look, and it's really crucial for this club not to be in a position where we start again. Like if we get to the point and we move Benji Marshall on, and say it's after a wooden spoon, which you guys are using as the criteria, we're not in a position next year to get away from that wooden spoon. So what are we looking at? Five, like half a decade of wooden spoons. This is something we need to actually work. So I think we need to put that support in around him. And I think what's really crucial right now is Jordan mentioned, and I mentioned as well, about how the players say they came here to play for him. But we saw Luai and Appia and how they spoke about him when the Galvin news broke. And I've said this a number of times now, but I think it's crucial to our season, and I think it's crucial to Benji Marshall's career, is that instead of just saying that they came here to play for him, instead of just talking big and saying how much support they've got of him, they really need to show it on the field.
Two
They,
the
they
two biggest weeks, Gary, were Parramatta. and
Yeah.
then Cowboys this week, and we didn't show it.
No, and they were the times where, depending on the media reports you listen to, that Benji made decisions based around what he wanted, but also what the players wanted, and and Galvin came straight back into the NRL side because the against Parramatta we didn't aim up well enough, and then we get rid of Galvin last week, and we go into last week and a time where the players can stand up and show that Benji Marshall made the right choice and they can support him in what must have been two really tough calls that he had to make. I don't think they performed on the field to show that support to him. And I think that's really crucial over the next couple of weeks that these players that talk about their love of Benji Marshall and how they love playing under him and how they support him show that support on the field. And I think it's really it's crucial, not just to our season, but to Benji's career.
One of my concerns, Jordan, is just I had a look before the defensive numbers. I said it preseason. I said I thought we could maybe be a top eight side in attack, um, but I worried, the best teams or the teams that look at Canterbury who've gone from the bottom and turned themselves into a top club is built on defence, and we're actually averaging now 26 points a game. I know with the rule changes and whatnot, the points per game are higher, so it's not like you have to be averaging under 20 anymore. 26 seems a bit concerning number.
Yeah, if I also think if we only
Couple of
lost to
blowouts there, I know.
yeah, the Melbourne blowout and stuff like that, because I think the opening 6 weeks or something, we were the second or third best defensive team.
Hmm.
So yeah, there's been a bit, and like we are scoring points, and we can score points, but yes, defensively at the moment, especially over the last 4 or 5 weeks, we haven't been great. But I also think that it has a lot to do with the amount of rotation and changes we've had to do in our forward pack. We're not getting consistency with our forwards and who's starting where, and Jack Bird coming in starting or he's not in, or the props are changing and the locks changing. So I think that comes down to part of it, because when we had consistency in our forward pack, our our defensive numbers were a lot better. So I think more or less there is improvements everywhere in there, but yeah, it has dropped off the last month.
One of my sort of mental rules in regard to rugby league is if you score more than 24 points in a game, you shouldn't lose that game. So that's kind of one of my theories on rugby league. And if you're averaging 26 points against you during the season, then you're going to lose more games than you're winning because you need to be doing much better than that. And I know the rules have changed over the last couple of years and points are higher, but you need to be keeping sides way close to that 20 point mark. Once you start getting 26 to 30, that signs that you're a poor defensive team for me.
All right, let's do a quick buy, sell, hold. One of our regular segments. Jordan, midweek pod. I'll fire the first one to you. West Tigers should prioritise retaining Talon de Silva over extending Appy Coruscant. Buy or sell that?
Selling it.
Why?
I Talon's got a lot of ability and talent. I have no doubt about that. But and I'm pretty sure it was actually Gary who pointed it out to me in relation to Harry Grant. I'm sick of these kids and these players holding us to gunpoint because they believe that somehow a 19-year-old kid has more force and ability and per se on a veteran of Appy's stature in the game. If you have the ability to sign someone like Appy and he's playing good football, even if it is for another 12 months, and you don't have the patience as a 19-year-old to sit there and learn off one of the great hookers in the game, then maybe we should be looking to bring in the next kid who's coming through, which is that Hayward kid, and allowing him to learn off Appy. I'm sick of the entitlement of some of these guys who think that they should be top dollar and top dog when they've only just put their foot in the water.
Look, I'm going to preface what I say about this that it's based off speculation that of stuff that we've read in newspaper reports. But for me, if I've got no issue if Talon da Silva decides that Appy's blocking his pathway, so he decides to go to open market and see what's available. I've got no issue with that whatsoever. What I do have an issue with is the story that came out in the newspaper stating he told the club that if they re-sign Appy Coruscant, he would be going to market. Now, if you go off and make that decision and you do that, it's the ultimatum around that I don't like. It, like I don't think
Do you think that's that unusual though, Gary? Even if he said
it,
that behind the closed doors?
it probably isn't, but it got into the media. That's where the issue about it comes for me. And um, I personally wouldn't want him saying that. I'm sure it happens all the time, but I don't know why a 19-year-old should be saying to the club, if you sign Appy Coruscant, a guy who's played State of Origin, has won multiple premierships at multiple clubs, has thinks they can go to their club and say, if you re-sign him, I'm going to look elsewhere. Now, more the fact that it then ends up in the media. Now, I'm sure it happens all the time. I just don't like it. And the Harry Grant example, and I do want to state all that's just based off what we've read in the newspaper. Like I don't know anything about it, and if it didn't happen, then I've got no issue whatsoever. But if that's what happened, I really don't like that, because when you look at a guy like Harry Grant, and I know he was at Melbourne, and I know he was behind Cameron Smith, but he played two first grade games before he turned 22. So you have a look at how many games Talon da Silva's played now, and I know where the Wooden Spoons. I know it's a different club, but the patience that guy had to actually sit there and wait for arguably the best hooker of all time to retire. But Appy Coruscant has been one of the better hookers of the last 10 years in the game. So I think he deserves a little bit more respect than that. And that's all based off if that actually happened or not. I don't know that it did. Um, but I'd hope he'd be a little bit more supportive and could look, as Jordan said, at what he could actually learn from playing closely with someone like Appy Coruscant.
Just playing devil's advocate, Jordan. Not necessarily that I agree with this, but it's my job as host to ask questions. Like, wouldn't could it be irresponsible though if the Tigers say, well, we're going to re-sign Appy because he's been so good, we're going to give him 1 or 2 more years as a 34-year-old. Um, when the drop off, when players get their mid 30s, there usually is a drop off, especially if you play in the middle of the field. Um, and we've got a potential guy here that can play for the next decade plus. You don't think any of that's potentially irresponsible?
No, I don't think it's irresponsible. I think it's more of a case that okay, so we re-sign Appy for 2 years. What, he'll be 36 possibly, or by the end of it.
He's 32 now, so he's not. I
Oh,
thought he was
30. So,
33. Yeah,
but
so
yes, okay, so he'll be 34, nearly 35. If Talon decides to sign behind him at the same time, he'll be what, 21? So and yeah, he can be a decade player and whatnot as well, but I don't think it's irresponsible. I think it's more of a case of going, well, we can start transitioning you. Same with Appy. We eventually it would get to that point where at that maybe in that last year of Appy's deal, he's the 14 and Talon's the 9, and Appy comes on for 15, 20 minutes in a game just to have that experience and
Which
troublesome
he was doing at
teams.
Penrith.
Exactly, which he was doing at Penrith. So I think it's more of a case of going, instead of jumping out of the boat the moment you think you're going to be blocked by someone like Coruscant, how about you sit there for the ride and then eventually you'll be the captain at the front and you'll have Appy behind you, still mentoring you and still helping you and showing you the way and taking that reduced role.
I think it also depends of how much faith they have in Hayward, the guy that's coming up underneath as well. If they see him as a better prospect moving forward than what they see Talon da Silva, then that gives you a little bit more kind of room to move on that and probably a little less um, tied to what Talon does. So I think it comes down to how highly they rate the Hayward coming through.
Just not sure, Gary, about that Penrith example you used because he was still playing the bulk of the
He
game. That was
he
more
was
attractive.
he was still playing more the bulk of the game, but he had no issue coming off the bench, and which leads me to believe that now that he's moving into the 30s, by the time he's 33, 34, I don't think he's going to have an issue of coming off the bench at that point either. He never really kicked up a stink about not starting games, and players like to start, no matter what they tell you. Being part of the 17 is still not the same as being part of that starting 13.
Just last one on Talon, Jordan. Is it, have you sort of player that he is? I sort of think, like, I don't think he's a Robbie Farah coming through, but I think Robbie Farah and Appy, by and large, are probably, I'm not going to say a dying type of hooker, but that creative sort of hooker is not that usual for me these days. It's more guys that are powerful and fast out of dummy half. And you look at Little now, the way he's playing, and Talon for me is a lot better than Little at the age. And whilst I think he's more a runner than a passer, do you think he has to develop his game, or have you been impressed by what you've seen?
He does have to develop his game. That's actually probably the difference with Hayward. Hayward is
I
a
haven't
bit
seen
more.
Hayward so fair.
Yeah, he's a bit more of a schemer. He's a bit more of the creative style hooker, that Farah and Coruscant style. Talon for me, his biggest deficiency at the moment is he gets bumped off a lot in defence. Now I know he's only young and he's still developing and whatnot, but I feel he's got explosiveness. He can really take advantage of a player with his back turned, but there hasn't been enough so far. He's young, he's got a lot to learn, but I haven't seen something for me where like he hasn't come on and changed a game. He's made some runs and he can expose tired forwards to a point, but at no stage have I gone, okay, this kid's probably close to even taking over Appy.
Yeah, my biggest concern has been defensively. You're exactly right, Jordan. Not only does he get bumped off, he's been caught out of position a few times during this season, and that's been a concern for me. I think he's going to be a wonderful hooker, very different style to what Appy is. And you are right, Hayward is a lot closer to that same sort of style that Appy has. So I guess it does, yeah, it kind of depends on what the club's looking for moving forward. Um, yeah, it's a tough call though.
He was good out at Henson Park, Gary. I made a trip to Henson Park on Saturday to watch the reserve grades. It's like going back to 1970. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, you would have fit in very well out at Henson Park on the weekend.
Good win by
I
Macca.
watched that game as well. I watched that game online, and he had an incredible game. So did Luke Lilly. I thought he was very strong playing at fullback as well. So yeah, he was but Talon was very good on the weekend.
Where should we go now? We're going to preview the game in a minute, but I've got a couple more buy sell holds, quick ones. Jordan, the club should re-sign Stafford Toa, buy or sell.
Buying that. He's starting to get some games together. It's, he's obviously had some runs with injury, but Stafford, a lot of Newcastle fans, I remember when we picked him up, said that was one that they would regret, and I'm starting to see it. The guy, like, he does have moments, but he has that ability. Like, he can beat a player one on one, and I really think he has that chance to develop into a real solid first grade centre.
Yeah, I think I said on the pod on Sunday night that at the start of the season, I wouldn't have picked him in round one, but he has been incredibly strong this year. His fend, that left-hand fend that he's had, uh, allowing him to beat his opposite centre and then draw the winger in, has been fantastic. And I was actually talking to Steve tonight, and we were talking about Stafford. The amount of times I've like in the two tries on the weekend are prime examples of it, where he goes through and it looks like it's really terrible defense. Guys just fall off
He
him.
broke 14 tackles on the weekend.
Yeah, but some of them they just look like guys had no idea defensively. And if you'd done that once or twice this year, I would have thought, oh, they're just poor defensive efforts. But he's absolutely ripping through tackles like constantly in games. And even when he doesn't score, he'll break two or three tackles and then get pulled down close to the line. There was another one on the weekend. where we almost scored the opening try. I think it was early in the game, and he broke a couple of tackles and tried to pass back inside to Taruva and kind of messed up the timing of it. But yeah, I would 100% be re-signing him next year. I'm very happy to go into next season with him as one of our centres. I, I think over the next couple of years he can develop into being, because like that, I was really shocked. Joel told me on the weekend he's only 24. So he's coming into that age where he's going to play his best football. And over the next couple of years, like, if he gets an injury-free run, he keeps his confidence high, I think he can be one of the better centers in the game.
It's his running style. There's one thing I've noticed with him, like with the breaking tackles, and it's actually something you can't really teach. It's just the way people run. But it's the way he comes across where he has his feet planted behind him and he uses that to basically use all that upper body strength and force. So he will literally plant like it's sort of almost like a hunch. But when he's running at players, I noticed it. And someone put up a comparison photo to Greg Inglis. Now I'm not saying he's going to be a Greg Inglis, but it is that same style. Is that where you have your feet behind you and you have your back arch and you're able to use that full force towards to bump the person off.
Yeah, but it's not even just bumping them off. Sometimes it looks like guys just clearly miss him. Like
Mm.
that they come in and he's not changing direction. He's just running it. So it may be he just gets his legs in a position where players misjudge how to tackle him. I don't know what it is, but it seems it's really hard to get a really clean shot on him at the moment. So hopefully it continues because yeah, he's one of the most dangerous players on the field for us.
All
I
right.
also think, sorry, Eddie, I also think playing on the same edge that Buller's playing on, I think Buller's starting to attract a lot of attention in attack. And I think that's creating a little bit more space for him as well to do his thing. He's getting nice early ball and he's getting one-on-one with his opposite centre a lot. And I think a lot of that comes down to one, him getting the early ball, but defense is keeping their eye on Buller as well. So yeah, he's getting a lot of one-on-one situations, which is really good for him.
Last one, and we don't have time to go down the rabbit hole with this one. So I apologize in advance to our listeners because I said I wouldn't mention him again, but I'm going to. So sorry. Jordan, you don't care how Lockie Galvin's career goes, buy or sell?
Why? I don't. I good luck to him. That's all I gotta say. Good luck to him.
Yeah, I don't care, but I hope it's really badly.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. All right, I'll keep my promise. So I had a rant prepared, but I'll save it for another day. We play Penrith on Sunday. Where's the game, Gary? I've forgotten. It's
It's at Combank,
Combank.
Sunday afternoon, 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock Sunday afternoon. I believe you guys have an ambush event before. Did I see something on Facebook about that?
We do have an ambush event. I'm really excited about this one. So starting at 3 o'clock, well, just after 3 o'clock, the gates open at 3 o'clock. Um, Near Gate B, the bar, members bar that's right next to Gate B as you come in. Take a right turn as you come through the gates and head in on into the ambush. Get in there nice and quickly because we've got Fanua Pole as our guest on Sunday afternoon. Very excited. Really looking forward to sitting down and having a little bit of a chat with him.
Might
Yeah,
be able to find
very,
out when he's back, Gary, because the club doesn't seem to want to tell us that.
mate. Every time I do these, because we always get an injured player because they're available to talk to. It's
Mm.
always my first question is,
Mm.
give me an update on when you'll be back. So we'll definitely be asking him that. We're also going to have a little bit of a chat to him about um, he's had a really unique pathway in rugby league. Like he's a Victorian junior and like came through the junior systems at the Storm and is one of the maybe the only Victorian junior in the competition. So I'm really interested to have a chat to him about that. So if you're heading out to the game, get there for gates opening and come on in and pay us a visit at that bar and have a listen to Paulie tell us about his
You
career so
might
far.
have to you might have to have a little word to him before, Gary. I think he's a very nervous interview or because I saw him on Fox once after the game with Mal Meninga and it looked like he'd never been on TV before. He looked really lovable personality, but looked really nervous.
So I better treat him with kid gloves then.
Yeah.
I'll save the hard questions for someone else.
Um, so Jordan, we play Penrith. I think it's a terrible sort of time to play them, given, would love to play them in the first 8 weeks when they were in free fall, but they look pretty close to full strength. But I don't think they're unbeatable like they were in previous years.
No, there's definitely a chance. I think this game's going to be one on the edges. This is going to be something we need to target the like of Jenkins, which I'm not sure if he's opposite Skelton this week, but there's definitely points to be scored on the edges out there. Their forward pack isn't as formidable as it was in previous years. I think they've really underestimated the loss of Fisher Harris. You've still got the likes of Isaiah Yeo and Moses Leota and whatnot, but I think if we are going to win those points, the tries are going to be scored in the centres and on the wings. I don't think we're going to go through the middle of them, but there is definitely opportunity to go around them.
Just on Penrith, Gary, quickly, I'm going to ask you for a yes, no, because I just went through their 17, and I don't want to be disrespectful because they've won 4 comps in a row and they've lost probably 17 great players or good players. But these are guys in their 17. I want you to tell me if they'd make the Tigers starting 13. Some of them might not be able to answer because you haven't seen enough. Thomas Jenkins,
Yeah, I haven't seen enough, but I'm going to say no.
Isaac Tungo,
No,
Casey McLean,
possibly.
Lays Talangi,
Don't think yeah, I think
Unwin,
he's struggling a little bit, but I think he's got a lot of potential
Mitch
and has
Kenny,
some really good moments. No.
Lindsay Smith, front rower, Scott
Yeah.
Sorensen. That's what I mean. I mean, if you take out their 5 Origin players who are absolutely elite, sadly they're all playing though, Gary. But I had a look at their roster and even their bench. Again, I can't read my own writing, but Luke Summerton, Matt Eisenhuth, the great Dane Laurie, and Luke Pettier. Never heard of some of them.
Look, it's definitely not the same side they've been fielding for the last 5 years, and I think how it's really coming out for them is they've been really inconsistent this year. They have played some really strong games, and they tend to be games where those those big five players that they have, where Yo and Cleary especially, kind of drag them through the games. I I, I think Jordan's exactly right. That loss of Fisher Harris has really hurt them. I don't think they're getting the punch up the field that they have in the past. And and there was a Matthew Johns was talking about it a couple of weeks ago how sideways that Cleary's been playing this year. And a lot of that comes because you're not playing against that retreating defense and you're unable to straighten, so you end up going across the field a little bit. And I think that's been a little bit of an issue for them this year. And look, I think this weekend that a lot of it does come down to what Penrith side kind of shows up. Because, yeah, for me, they've been fairly inconsistent and probably more poor than they've been good throughout this season, which is why they are where they are on the table. So I don't write us off this weekend.
Fair few changes for us, Jordan. I'll ask you quickly which one you're most excited about and least excited about. So Jarrell Skelton's back on the wing. Sione Fainu to prop. Tony Suko to starting back row. Alex Seyfarth to lock. Lasu Fainu, Charlie Murray, and Kitlel Lilly on the bench.
I'm most excited about Gerald Skelton being back. I liked what I saw from him at the start of the year. I hope that he's fit and he's ready to go. Hamstring injuries can always be a fickle thing. So I'm really excited to see Jarrell Skelton. I have no idea about this Charlie Murray guy.
Hmm.
When I saw the name on the bench the other week and then I saw him actually in the squad this week, I did a quick look, but I had no clue who he was. But apparently he's a middle forward with good footwork, but he's a small middle forward, so I don't know what kind of impact he's going to have.
Gary, which one are you least excited about besides Seyfarth at lock?
Yeah, I'm not too happy about that one. I have to, yeah, Charlie Murray. I don't know anything about him, so it'll be interesting to see how he goes. I do want to agree with Jordan on Skelton. I think a lot of our difficulties over the last couple of months has a lot to do with him not being there. That go forward that he provides has made a big difference at the start of the season. So hopefully we get that back. And I'm also really keen to see how Tony Suka goes starting. I think he's shown some real promise the last couple of weeks. I wasn't too impressed with him earlier in the season, but I think he can potentially um, be an upgrade on safer Faf on that edge, and so I'm really keen to see how he goes.
Last one on the game. Jordan, how many minutes do you think Latu should or will play? Or both?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Won't start,
I
really. Won't start.
no, he won't start. I kind of hope it's not a gimmick 8 minutes
10 minutes.
or
Yep.
something at the end of the game. I kind of really hope that's actually 15 minutes or 15 minutes before half time, and then maybe another 15 minute spell in the second half somewhere. So that would be ideal. But yeah, I just hope it's not some little gimmick 8 minute appearance at the end of the game that has no real meaning.
What I'd like to see from him is actually spend some time in that link role that we saw him play. I think his last NRL game. I thought that made a big difference to our shape and structure. So I'd like to see if that can continue this weekend. So I'd actually like to see him come on and pretty much play that middle role, that lock role, and see how that goes again. I do have to say I'm really looking forward to seeing Kit play as well. I think he'll provide some impact off the bench. I thought he was very strong in our trials, and I was really disappointed he didn't get a run in the second trial we had. I can't remember who it was against now. Was it Parramatta? I can't remember. I was really disappointed he didn't get a run in that game because I thought he deserved more time against NRL players. So I'll be really keen to see how he goes this weekend as well.
Right, let's do the quiz because we're running out of time. Question one, it's multiple choice. Which 2006 big name signing uploaded a photo of the new Bulldogs player with the caption, "Can someone please give this massive dork a haircut?" Was it A, Jamal Alessi, B, Keith Galloway, C, Ryan O'Hara, or D, Sam Harris? Jordan?
I'm gonna go Big Keithy.
Yeah, it was key for sure.
No, it was Ryan O'Hara. And
Really?
Oh,
yeah, he probably got a bit of blowback for that because he didn't exactly excel when he
Ryan
came.
O'Hara, one of the most disappointing forward signings, along with Jason Kalis.
Because he smoked about 3 packets of cigarettes a day. I used to see him out when I was young at those nightclubs, and I used to think, man, this guy's not a pro.
Didn't a broken jaw end his career or something?
I think his career was ended by a lack of a giving of stuff. But anyway, but yeah, I do vaguely remember that. Big shout out Ryan O'Hara if you're listening. True or false? West Tigers and Penrith Panthers shared a full-time score in which both teams had single digits.
True.
False.
It was true.
Oh,
Yeah, I kind of
Nine
remember it.
eight golden point loss for us. It was the start of 2019. It was when Cleary scored in the last
Yeah.
minute or whatever, and they kicked it from the sideline.
It
Another
was
night.
a horrible, horrible game of football.
Yeah.
that's probably why I don't remember it.
Nearest to the pin, what jersey number did Paul Fadawira wear for his one and only West Tigers game at starting 5'8"? I'm assuming it wasn't number 6. What number was it, Jordan?
14.
I'll just go four.
It was number 15. John Morris wore the 6, but was named on the bench. What a shock. Tim Sheen's doing something like that. Charlie Murray debuting on the weekend. Named the 50th, 100th, 150th, 200, 250th, and 300th West Tigers players. No one's got any idea, do they?
Nope.
I'll just give a 10-second pause so our listeners out there can think about it, or they can pause the
Or,
podcast itself. So I'm
or
going to read them
Google it.
now. 50th player was Anthony LaFranchi, 102 games. 100th player was Rocky Chamaki, 8 games. 150, Joel Reddy, 27 games. 200th player was Matt McCulrick, 27 games. 250th was Oliver Gilder, 8 games. Charlie Murray's our 300th player on the weekend. Last one is Who Am I? Born in Sutherland in 1983. Debuted with the local NRL side in the same year as Benji. So 2003 Sharks, I'm thinking there. Joined their local rivals, the Dragons, for 2 years. Secured, I don't think this guy ever played for West Tigers, by the way. Secured a 2-year deal west to this weekend's opponents. So Cronulla, St George, Penrith landed at our joint venture, making 0 appearances in centenary season. Left mid-season to join Canterbury and played 4 games, finished in the Super League. Became a male model in Australia and New York. He was a winger.
Oh,
Currently the Community Engagement and Partnerships Manager for the Sydney Marathon. Who gives us stuff about that? But who was it? It was, if I was doing it, the model one would have triggered me because I do remember this dude. He was a fairly fast winger, but Sharks 2003, Dragons 2004-5, Panthers 2006-7, West Tigers 2008, Bulldogs 2008, Super League 2009 and 12, Nick Youngquist. So
yeah.
Yachty
He
has
actually signed with
decided,
the Tigers. I never actually thought he signed with us.
yeah, well, he signed and never played a game. So maybe I wish a few more players had done that in the past, Gary, but not to be. All right, boys. Thank you, Jordan, in particular, for jumping on. Hopefully, we can get a win on Sunday. I'm not sure if we'll do a Sunday night pod because a little tricky with the Monday public holiday, and I'm not sure. So if we don't do one Sunday night, Gary, we'll do one Monday.
Yeah, do one Monday.
Thanks, boys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.